Hello everyone, and welcome to our Capitol Watch program for Friday, January 11th. The first Capitol Watch program of our new year. As you know, the General Assembly went back into session on Wednesday for its 2013 session. And from now on through the end of the session in May, we'll be providing you with these weekly updates on legislative activities as they affect elementary and secondary education throughout the state of Missouri. And joining us, as always, from our governmental relations offices in Jefferson City is our Associate Executive Director for Advocacy, Mike Reed. And Mike, we're off and running again with another legislative session, aren't we?
We are off and running again. It started Wednesday, and already things are starting to pop.
And Mike, tell us about the General Assembly. We've had an election now, and how different is the General Assembly this year?
Well, the General Assembly is different this year because the Republicans have a veto-proof majority in both the House and the Senate. So when in the past we had some ideas that if a bill was a little bad that we maybe needed to have some help from the governor on, if we could veto it, that isn't there anymore. So it's a very different sort of situation. The House of Representatives and Senate are saying to the governor, okay, it's time to come to the table and talk and do negotiation and discussion because we have a veto-proof majority.
And Mike, we have two new leaders, both the House and the Senate, and those two leaders gave their initial speeches this week when the session opened on Wednesday. Tell us about that.
Yes, they did. Tom Dempsey in the Senate and Tim Jones in the House gave their initial speeches talking about numerous things. One of them has EEE and the other is BIG. But so big and EEE, but a lot of it dealt with economic development, making sure the tax structure is adequate in the state of Missouri and that we are not losing industry because of our tax structure, and questions about elementary and secondary education. There was some discussion in the speaker's speech about looking at elementary and secondary education. I think the question of teacher tenure will come up again this year, and also merit pay.
And Mike, the Senate leader in particular seemed to emphasize tax credit reform, something that we're very interested in. So, are you sensing some support for that idea in the Senate and House?
Yes, he did. He talked about tax credit reform. He also talked about having streamlined sales taxes on internet sales also. So I do see some movement in that because they look and they know that that's a big drain on the top of our money.
And Mike, we also had some appointments this week of committees and committee chairs. Tell us about that.
Yes, the Senate committee is chaired again by Senator David Pierce, and we expected that. David's been a good friend of education, and we're looking forward to working with him. The House chair is Representative Steve Cookson. Steve Cookson was the vice chair last year, and the vice chair this year is Jay Barnes. We're looking forward to working with both of them. Steve Cookson has a background in education as a former superintendent. I think that we have our work cut out because we have to educate the entire committee on what is best for public education in the state of Missouri. But it'll be a challenge, but I think, Representative Cookson has already reached out. We've reached out to him. We've had some good discussions, and we're looking forward to working with him and showing what's best for the students in Missouri.
And Mike will be listing all the members of both the House Elementary and Secondary Education Committee and the Senate Education Committee in our Legislative Voice newsletter, so our members can get a feel for the members of those two critical committees as far as we're concerned. Mike,
yes.
One issue that we're dealing with immediately here in the legislature is an issue that related to the Sunshine Law and the expiration of some provisions of the Sunshine Law that occurred at the end of the year related to school safety plans. And this is presenting a real challenge for school districts across the state of Missouri. And last Friday, as a matter of fact, Governor Nixon held a couple of news conferences in which he expressed support for reinstating the provisions of the Sunshine Law that would allow some of these school safety records to remain closed. And MSBA Executive Director Carter Ward, some other MSBA leaders participated in that news conference. And let's take a look now at what the governor had to say about that issue.
Now is not the time to undermine the shared efforts of school officials, law enforcement, fire personnel, and first responders to enhance our readiness over the past decade by weakening laws that protect our communities. The sensitive security procedures that protect our kids, our communities, and our critical infrastructure from criminals and terrorists quite simply do not need to be in the public domain. These narrowly tailored exemptions have worked and should continue to work to prevent our open records laws from being misused by those who could employ this information for malicious purposes.
And Mike, we've known these provisions were going to expire for some time, and we've been working on this for a couple of years, but unfortunately now they have expired, and the need for action is urgent, isn't it?
It is. I think people who watch this remember the last one we had at the end of last year. That was one of my biggest problems, and that we just couldn't get it across the finish line. It was very close, and we didn't get it done. But we are back again and working very hard. Bills have been introduced in the House. The bill will be introduced in the Senate the first of next week. On both sides, they have emergency clauses, so as soon as they pass and the governor signs it, it goes into effect. We're very, very hopeful that this can get done and be one of the first bills passed during the session. It's going to be really important, though, that our members talk to their reps and their senators and tell them that, this is the kind of information that does not need to be out in the general public. The governor is completely right. This is the kind of information that needs to be contained and controlled. Our security plans do not need to be on the front page of every newspaper in the state of Missouri.
Mm-hmm. Mike, what's coming up next week? Are we to the point yet where we're holding hearings on bills, or is that coming up a little later?
Well, bills are being assigned, but I don't believe there are going to be any really hearings on bills next week. When I talked to Senator Pierce, I think it's going to be the week after next, and Representative Cookson, though both committees probably will meet next week to have some organizational meetings. On Monday is the inauguration, so it is a big day down here. The governor will be sworn in, as well as all the other statewide elected officials, except the auditor who runs in the off years. So it's a big day. There will be a big dance on Monday night. Tuesday will be kind of making up for whatever happened on Monday, and most of the work will start on Wednesday of next week. So next week will be kind of an abbreviated work week. I expect a lot of bills to be introduced and committees to do their housework, but the real work will start the week after that.
And another big event coming up, Mike, is the governor's State of the State address, scheduled this year for January 28th. And that's really when we find out what the governor's budget proposals will be, isn't it?
That's correct. The governor lays out his budget proposals in that. We'll be very interested to see if we get an increase in funding in the foundation formula. We will not get it fully funded, but it would be nice if the governor would throw in another $5 or $10 million. While it's kind of sounds like a lot of money to most of us, it's in a big budget, it isn't a lot, but at least it shows that we're trying to move forward on funding that.
And Mike, once again this year, we'll be urging our members to go to Jefferson City to meet with their legislators throughout the legislative session through our School Board Advocacy Network. And tell us about those meetings coming up.
That's right. Our S-bands come and they meet on Tuesday. We come meeting here in our office in Jefferson City, and we talk about what bills are out there, what committee hearings will be held, what the status of various pieces of legislation is that's going on out there. And it's very important that our members meet on a one-to-one basis with their state reps. The House of Representatives has approximately 60 new members. That's an awful lot out of 163. So there are a lot of people who are new to the system and are very close to the people back home, and that's who really makes the change. Interestingly enough, there are a number of school board members and former school board members who have been elected now, and we're looking forward to working with them, and we're looking forward to their members and the people they have worked with previously to come down and talk to them. The most important and the best lobbying effects that we have are our members who are elected officials talking to the members of the General Assembly who are also elected officials. It's good to see people from home come down and talk to people about what's going on and how what they do affect the students in the state of Missouri.
Mike, of course, we're just getting started with the legislative session. It will go until mid-May, and we will be keeping our members up to date on issues as they work their way through the General Assembly, not only through this program, but through our legislative voice, critical issue alerts, and it's really important for our members to keep up to date, isn't it?
It is. It's very important for our members to keep up to date. There are a lot of things that are going to be happening, a lot of various pieces of legislation, and we'll talk about them more in the weeks to come as they are filed. But it's extremely important that they keep informed and keep letting people know how the actions down here affect people at home. Also, people need to remember that in February, we have our legislative forum. And that's like our S-band visits. It's a really good time to come down and visit with the members of the General Assembly.
All right, Mike Reed, thanks a lot for joining us. You have your work cut out for you as we begin the legislative session, and we'll be talking with you every Friday on this program, and as we mentioned, through our Legislative Voice newsletter and critical issue alerts, and our daily blog, by the way, on the MSBA website. You can check that for daily developments in the legislature as well. Thanks a lot for being with us, and we hope you join us again every week during the session for MSBA's Capitol Watch.